Hey, welcome back to Jameson's Repair Shop. So now we're into the nitty-gritty of things. We're going to start to build this patch panel that I've been talking about so much. So we've got my jig built, buck, however you want to refer to it, and like I said in the last video, I'll try to continue referring to it as one of those two things. Probably jig, that's kind of what it is. So yeah, so let's get a sheet of steel up on the table here, the cutting table. I got one piece right here, so I'll get it up. We'll cut a piece off it, and we'll get this done. I decided to go 4 inches to give myself extra. I'd rather be a little wide than too short. Put the camera up off the floor. So now I'll dig out my shears, and I'll cut along that line. I got her clamped down, so I don't have to worry about that. I'm going to cut right down the middle of the line. I'm going to take the line right off. There we go. One thing you got to learn about the shears when you're using these, don't tip them forward like this. Keep them back like this. They'll cut and let them do their own work. I find even now, after I've been using them for a while, I still want to force them, but you can't. They'll actually come to a stop if you're trying to force them. So tip them back and let them do their work. Yeah, sometimes you gotta tip it just a tiny bit from side to side and it'll take right off. Anyway, that is a 4-inch wide piece. So let's get back up over here, move the camera back onto what we're doing here, and I'll show you, so hopefully people will understand what I'm doing. So this is only one piece I need to cut. That's why I'm going to leave the steel out, because this isn't long enough. I need 50 some inches, 53, 54 inches. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to wrap this right around. I'm not going to cut the other piece until I know how much I need, and that's why I needed this to be wide enough to go all the way around. It's not bad here, but 4 inches is just enough. And actually, yeah, because you got to kind of go on a kitty corner, so like that. Yeah, so 4 inches is going to take every bit of it. Now I can come over like that. Yeah, that's probably what I'll end up doing. So this side here is not bad. It's pretty much a straight run, so I can go sort of like that and wrap it, so like this. And we'll get her done. I'm going to put the bends in it, and then once I get the bend in it, I'm going to try to flange it. Like I said, I have a couple of different methods I want to flange it with, but let me get set up to do this and see how it looks. I gave it a slight bend. I'm going to have to straighten this out again. That's why I didn't want a big kink in it. But what I did, I clamped it on, and then I took my scribe, I had it down flush, and I took my scribe along here, and you'll see, I don't know, you might be able to see it from behind the camera and see if you can see that or not. Yeah, you can see the scribe line. So there's the shape of the fender skirt right there. So what I'll do, I'll cut that out, but I'm going to cut it out, leave some on there, because I can always trim that after. And once I cut it off, I'll have to weld it on. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to flatten this back down, and I'm going to use the shears actually to cut that out. Well, that's kind of the contour of it. Lots of little scraps left. So there we are. That's, like I said, rough, but that's kind of what we're looking for. So I'm going to have to, I don't know if you can see it or not, but I'll bring you back. What I run into already Yeah, you can't. So what I run into, and I kind of anticipated it, and it's not a big deal because this will be, I'll start to flange this before I clamp it on. So what it is, when you put it on here, it wants to tip this way because of this bead that I put on. No problem, because I'm going to start flanging that. And I'm not sure, I might dig the bead roller out for this. I'm not good with a bead roller, but I might try it. All right, if not, I got another plan. And but I'll get it set up, and we'll see what happens. Okay, I got the bead roller set up, my cheap bead roller. I did reinforce it though, so it doesn't flex. And I ran kind of a test piece through. I don't know if you can see that or not. So that's a little bit too far. So I'm going to just keep checking it as I go. That was like 2 passes on that. So I'm going to try and probably end up doing 2 or 3 passes. So I'm alone, so it's a little harder to do this stuff by yourself with this manual style. But I'm going to try it. We'll see what happens. I'm not really counting the turns here, so that feels tight enough for now. So I'm going to go slow and see what happens here. See if I can get a bead on this. Now I have to go back and get the bead up there, but I don't want to go off the end. I mean, this is the flat surface of the flange, so it's not necessary that it's 100%, but I want it the best I can get it. We'll see what happens. So I just set back 1/4 inch from the initial line I had on the, I hope you can hear me. So I put that scribe line on with the surface facing of the face surface of the fender skirt, and then I stepped back about 1/4 inch from that again. So that's where I'm cutting this line in at, just to make sure I have lots to work with. All right, they should have had a handle here on these instead of back like that. It's a bit awkward when you're by yourself. I should motorize this. I would probably use it a lot more. I will be using it on the floor panels, that's for sure. So if anybody's not sure what I'm doing, once I get this bent, or this piece in there, and it's not 100%, believe me, once I get that flange in there, I'm going to have to dress it up a bit and make it good. This will go over the arch, and then the panel will weld on the back of that, but we'll get to that. This is early yet. This may not even work, this. It's a little bit wobbly right now because I keep dodging around. If I just had another set of hands. My wife's away right now, so I would get her, because she likes doing this stuff too. But she'll be home this afternoon, so if this is too awkward, I'll get her tomorrow to help me out. Now, I don't know how much this needs to be tipped off there, so I'm just going to run it off. Well, it needs to be a little deeper. It's got a little waver in it, a little bit right there. So maybe I can, when I tighten it down deeper, it'll be better. Let's try it one more pass. The second pass is almost easier because now you have a good line to follow. But if I have to, I can tap them in with a cold chisel. But I wanted to make this as easy as I could. Now, the challenge with putting in a bead now is, like I'm doing, all right, let's see if that'll work. The challenge is now when you arch it over the fender skirt, you have to deal with this because now you're putting strength in this panel. So that's something that you have to be aware of when you're bead rolling. The whole idea of bead roller is adding shape and strength, and that's why they do it on floor panels, is to add strength to the floor. Not bad. It would help if my bead roller wasn't flopping around on me a little bit. There. All right. I think that's, so when that's sitting, when that's bent around the wheel arch like this, this will be the fender skirt area. When that gets bent around, I think that's going to be a pretty decent arch, a pretty decent line. What do you guys think? A little wavy, especially right here, but I'll tap, maybe I can tap that out. I could come in a little bit with it right now. Don't fool with it, leave it alone. Don't fool with it. You got a pretty decent one other than this little spot here, and I might be able to do something with that. For the most part, the fender skirts will be on the car. This little bit here may never be visible once you get it bent and everything underneath. I'm going to call that lip enough for this fender skirt. Now the challenge is getting it wrapped around the skirt. I got her back on the fender skirt, so what I'm trying to do is to bend it around. And that's why that piece was in there, why I put it in. So I'm trying to get it so it sits down on this without bending up everything too much. All right. And then it'll rest again against that bead. That's the idea of it. I should have had a light clamp ready. That one right here might work. See if this is not tight enough yet. Oh, prototyping, right? You bend in. I've heard it said a few times that metal is like clay, and I do agree with that. The more you work with it, the more it feels like clay. It's just harder to, it's just, you need different tools, that's all. But it is a lot like clay, for sure. Now, all right. I'll put another one on that because that's not down flush. A little bit tighter on this one. There. Now I'll move this one along, make sure it's drawn down tight. Yeah. How's it look in the back? It's high here. This is all high. So I'm going to have to work it as I come along. So I'm going to need to free up probably all of these. So I gotta I could take it out and put it over a barrel or something and roll it, but I just need to get it down. Like so. It wants to twist a bit. That's what's going on. Alright, so I may have to take this, and I don't want this to be warped, right? So if it's great, you could force it in there, but you're warping the fender skirt. So that's not good to do that. So I'm going to have to, I might have to shrink. I have a shrinker stretcher. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to play with it some. But this is the idea of it. It's not bad. It's there. It's just that this here is not in. But I can cut that out in as far as there, and it would settle right down, I'm sure. Or put it over something and bend it. What do I have is like that? Probably a propane tank. This is only a slight grade. A large tank or something. Let me find something to bend that over and see if we can get it to go down without putting pressure on it. Alright, I got one of these 1 pound barbecue tanks, camping tanks. I got some bigger ones, but I just need something to give it some shape. There. Oh yeah, that's probably way too much already. I'm guessing that's probably way too much already. And it's not even in the right place. But, you know what? You can always bend it back and do it again. Yes, it needs to go more right about here. Just above that piece that sticks out. Like that. And then, like I say, you can always bend it back. Yeah. That's coming better. So it needs a little more up here. Whatever you have to work with, oops, I kinked a little bit. Whatever you have to work with, just use it. You don't always need the special tools. All right, it's coming down. The idea is, like I said, is to get this on there without having to clamp it in place. Like, it should sit down nice. You shouldn't have to force it. That's getting better for sure. It's a little twisted, so if it's a little twisted, just make it conform. There, look at that. Yeah. And if you gotta do it again, do it again. Alright, I think it's down. But what I'm gonna have to start doing is putting marks on it so I get it in the same spot every time from now on. So it doesn't get out. Because, you know, you're putting it in, taking it off and on, and yeah. And that's why I left lots on there, so I can go by after and trim that down to mate the surface. Once you've set this in place, it's hard to do that. Oops, that's a little bit sharp there. Anyway, I'll continue on with this. I may dig the shrinker out, pull it back that way some. I can always, just like I said, I can always split it a little bit too and just bring it back. Because it's wanting to, it's good here, really good here, but it wants to drift this way. And I don't want tension on it, I want this to lay down easily. So I may have to split it. And even if I have to cut it right off and start over with a new stretch, I'll do that too. But there is a lot of meat there, and it doesn't need to be, because you only need, in here is only going to be the flange for the inner wheelhouse to hook to. Wheel arch flange. You can't see that. The wheel arch flange will be only 3/4 of an inch from here over. So I could get rid of, like in the problem areas, I could just come in and cut it out and give myself a lot more flexibility. Alright, but it's coming. Actually, that bead roller, not too bad. Not too bad. A little wonky right here, a little too far that way. But, hey, Like I said, I can split it and move it back. All right, now I'm rambling on. All right, let me continue on with it and I'll keep you updated. This is how this should look when I'm done. That's a pretty good bead for that piping. But focus on it. So I think that's deep enough. It gives it that contour that's needed to sit in there. It's good. All right, I've been looking at this as it's been bending over the jig. This piece here, I'm not super happy on how it's going over. It's wanting to, you know, twist and stuff. And I think I could get my stretcher out and shrinker stretcher and do some work with it. But I think since I already know I need roughly 3/4 of an inch on inside, well, this whole thing has to be just 3/4 of an inch, really. But I don't know how much I'm gonna have to take off out here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring it down to 1 inch on the inside of this bead that I put in. So I have my caliper set for 1 inch, and I'm gonna use the 2 out-facing prongs. I'm just gonna start roughly right here, because I think this will just be cut. This is gonna be cut off sort of like that. So I'm just gonna start right about here. I should have this clamped down, and I'm just going to, using the calipers as a score and a guide, I'm just going to do a rough 1 inch line along that I can cut off with my shears. The shears seem to be working quite well for following the lines. I quite like that. So I keep it straight. I mean, this is a rough cut, so I mean, if it's not going to be 100%, I know I'm giving myself lots of extra here. So and that line, you may not be able to see it, but I can see it very clearly, especially when I'm wearing my glasses. All right, I don't know if you can see that line or not. So let's get the shears out. And we'll cut that off. I don't know if I should clamp it down. Since yeah. Alright, let's get her done. I should be able to hang on to it. I prefer to do it this way because then I can manage it somehow. Alright, let's see what happens. Like I say, I've given myself lots of extra, so let's go for it. Door, get a little burr on it, but all right. Well, got a pigtail there. That should make it much easier for for bending around. We'll get rid of this stuff. We'll get rid of the tools and stuff, and we'll start over here again. Start on the jig. Back on the jig. So just kind of get it in snug against the just against that bead. Let's see how this goes. There. That's against there. Let's put one down in here. Hard to get in this one. There we go. There. That's down. Now I'll be wrapping it around, and I may have to twist it a bit, but now I have yeah, it's still wanting to because it has to come in that way. So I may have to get the shrinker out. Yeah. That, again, I don't want to twist it so it warps this, because this has to be true. So I think either I split it right here with and then turn it, which I can do. I can split it and just bend it, or I can get the shrinker out and do a little shrinking. All right, I'm going to think about it and I'll get right back to you. I've decided to slit it because not everybody has a shrinker. So I'm going to cut it into about here. This is right on this this bend. So I'm going to slit it there and just lap that over and start. You'll see. Okay, now that I have that done, I'll clamp it back down on the jig. I'll kind of loosen that a bit, get it loosey goosey. Now that seemed to have lined it a little better. Again, I'm trying to keep it like relaxed as much as I can, so a little loosening there is not bad. So it keeps this from twisting. So I'll continue on, and I'll weld this up after. So I need a few more clamps. So I'll get the clamps out and continue on with that. Okay, so you'll see I had to chop it in a couple spots. One thing about this stuff here, generally the metal will tell you what it needs. So I had to cut some relief in it. So what I'll do is open those up a bit so they go smooth. These need to be welded down flush. They can't be overlapped like that because, again, this is the actual panel that we're working on now. So I'm going to tack them in place. Cut a little bit more. I'm going to, like I did before, I backed it off from the wheel arch to cut it. So I'll give it a little slit, a little bit wider slit there. Width of a blade, that's all it took to bring them in. I think you can see that. That's the overlap. And a little bit the same here. They're all about the same amount. So let's get that done. I'll weld them. And then we'll continue on up to do the front part. This is a bit wobbly, but this is going to be all hidden. And then this lip here is just a little too high. It needs to be tapped down. This is where, this isn't cut to, as I explained a few times I think already, that we'll be taking the scribe, one that fits in there better than that, and going right along, like that. And this will be cut down, this whole thing will be cut down. And I'm going to tip that arch back down once we're ready for that. And then once we cut that off, that's where the actual panels will fit all the way around out to the rest of the vehicle. This is just the flange. You've seen me cut those out. So I got a little gap there now, and I hammered a dolly a little bit to settle those down some. This, you can barely see it in there, but this panel is still at least a 1/4 inch too wide, but we'll scribe that after and cut it. I'm not going to do it right now. I'll do it once we ready to finalize this panel. Same there, I hammered the dolly a little bit just to settle it down. I may continue on doing a few as we go along. It helps just bring it in. And you don't have to hit hard on that stuff. It's just light taps and away you go. And like I said, this flange is pointing upward a little bit too high. It needs to be tapped down, but I'll take the dolly. Once we take this off, I'll take it off the jig and tap it all down and have that right before we actually put the patch panels, those side panels on. That's blurry so before we put those side panels on, once we make them. Got some welding done. So now those should stay in place. I'm going to leave the clamps on. I'll leave the clamps on up here because I have to continue on. So I'm going to have to cut another piece of metal. And this may only need to be this one. I don't think this one needs to be a full 4 inches. I think 3.5 would be more than enough. But hey, you can only cut it once. So maybe I'll cut it 4. I think I will. I'll cut it 4 and eat the 1/2 inch. Well, I mean, none of it goes to waste very little. It gets used elsewhere. So yeah, so I welded those up. We're getting to the point now when you're starting to weld this stuff. This is okay here because it's supported very well. But pretty soon, I got to remind myself you can't just burn through it like that because you'll start warping your sheet metal. So once we get out joining this flange onto the panel, it'll be a no-no to do any of that kind of welding. It'll be a lot slower process. Couple shots, let it cool, move on to another spot or whatever it takes. Cool it down with some air, or there's lots of ways of doing that. Myself, I like it just letting it natural cool, but if I'm in a hurry, you always take another route. All right, I'm gonna cut some steel for that. I don't think I'm gonna torture you with all that stuff. And I'm gonna do basically the same as I did with this. So I'll cut the steel, I'll clamp it on here, I'll scribe it inside, cut off the excess of it with remainder enough that I can scribe like this, so I can scribe it, and put it on. And I'll get back to you when that's done. I don't think there's any need to show every bit of that. I think everybody knows what I'm doing now. And I'll also bead roll it. So I'll do all that and I'll get back to you. There we go, hot off the jig. Hot off the press, hot off the jig. Anyway, that's the flange, inner flange for the rear quarter panel. So obviously it's not finished yet because it needs to be trimmed back. Like I said before, this is still too wide, that's still too wide. But I think I've explained that a few times already. So it looks pretty good. I mean, that's all inside hidden. Now, I went ahead because the next step of this process, that's still not, I don't really like this so much. I may split it here and move those in. But I mean, that again, you're never going to see that. And I don't want to waste time on things that don't mean anything. Anyway, let me get back on it. That squirrel, I got distracted. Sorry about that, guys. Anyway, so what I went and did, I started cleaning off the filler with a wire wheel on this. Because this is the next part I have to build. So I need to build this skin. And I'm going to go right up, probably I'm going to try to go right up to this body line. I may do it in sections, go up to that body line straight. That way I can do, on the brake fairly easy. But there is, I don't know, I have to get a straight edge, but generally there's a bit of shape to these, both ways. This one doesn't seem to be much, but I think there is some. So I have to make sure, testing it, fitting it, a lot of that. And as you can see, there's not a lot left there. Probably enough here to get this. This seems to be intact. When it was covered in filler, I wasn't sure if they had hacked that all up, but this looks to be factory. And I know underneath, right underneath the lip that goes onto the rocker, the inner rocker, it's there. So, but I still have the green car out there that has a pretty clear line of this stuff here. So I'm going to, I'll make it and I'll double fit, check with both vehicles. And if this one seems to be okay, then we'll go with it. With that said, that will conclude this video with the inner flange built. So anyway, thanks for watching me tackle this project. I learn stuff as I go as well, and we'll see you in the next one.